Welcome to BuffaloWriter.com. In a previous video, I read an excerpt from my Otto Dix book, The Diaries of Otto Dix. A description of a meeting between Dix and Pablo Picasso. A meeting that never occurred in real life, but should have occurred because it was a natural, okay? And another meeting that would have been a natural would have been a meeting between Dix and Henry Miller, the writer. Henry Miller wrote Tropic of Cancer, a book I read when I was a student at the university and had a big influence on me as a writer. Miller lived for many years as an expatriate in Paris in the 20s and 30s, and Dix was at this same time painting in Germany, so it was conceivable that they could meet, you know. And if they had met, it would have happened like this. Last night I had my show. Mother I was right. Paris is the place. I showed the usual. Some paintings, drawings, lithos, a few watercolors. They oohed and ahed. Now they have to buy. I was introduced to a man named Henry Miller. Miller's a writer, novelist. I've not heard of this man, but Mother I assures me he's a genius. He's an American from New York. He also paints. He says, if I had to do it over, I would be a painter. And I said, I would be a writer. Lunch with Henry Miller. It's myself, Mother I, Martha, and the children, Henry Miller, and a woman named Anais Nin and her husband. Anais Nin is a patroness of Miller. She gives him money to live on in a minimal way. A noble creature. Or maybe not so noble. Something tells me Miller is banging her. And the husband knows. Miller is short, bald, wears glasses, has a cigarette dangling from his lips at all times. For a 43-year-old bum who's written one book nobody has read, he seems amazingly well known. I like him. He lives by his wits. He's a hustler, but he's an entertaining hustler. He has charisma. Most writers have the charisma of a piece of pocket lint. Lunch breaks up. Martha leaves with the children to shop. Mother I drags Anais Nin and her husband back to the gallery to look at paintings. I go for a walk with Miller. This is what he does, to explore Paris. He knows the city better than people who have lived here their entire lives. We walk. He points out the sights. This is the house where Balzac lived. This is the bridge Courbet considered jumping from when threatened with jail by his creditors. This is the alley where Edgar Allan Poe was assaulted while drunk. This is a whorehouse. Miller says, I've been to this place. The girls aren't bad. Pause. He's thinking about the girls. Too bad he has this stiff on his hands. The respectable married man with 2 children. We visit a cafe. I buy him a drink. He says, this is my philosophy. Came to me when I was 33. I was working for the telephone company in New York. I was in charge of personnel. I hired and fired. I had a big office with a secretary. Not a bad job. It was a great job. The women came at me like flies. I met all these people. I met the young and the old, the funny and the sad, the sane and the insane, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They would come in and sit down and tell me stories. I heard amazing stories. One day I was sitting in my office looking out the window. The thought occurred to me that my life was over. I was trapped like a rat. I had this job that I would work at for the next 40 years. And then I would drop dead. I continued to dwell on this thought. I got up from my chair, went in to see my boss, and told him I was quitting. I was married at the time and had a child. I went home. My wife said, "What are you doing here?" I told her. There followed a long conversation, but I had made up my mind. That's how I became a writer. I don't know if I quit my job first and then became a writer, or vice versa. But the minute I thought of it, it made perfect sense. Later, I met a woman who was as crazy as me. Came to Paris together. Then she went back to New York. But I stayed. And here I am. Back on the street. Somehow, here's the whorehouse. Miller says, "Can you loan me 200 francs? That's the excerpt. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, read the book, okay? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.